Hi everyone, today we're going to look at the second installment of the collection of which formation to choose, and today it's the 4-3-3. The first video was on the 4-2-2, maybe my personal favourite, and yeah, today we're going to look at the 4-3-3. So this is the general setup. We have the four backs, two centres, a right wing back, a left wing back, three centre players. In the later slides, I've just called them all centre halves because you have to work as a three. So I just think it's easier to label them centre half. You may tend to set up with more of a defensive minded player and two hires. So if you want to separate them, you could say inside left, inside right, just so you have a structured start. And then three forwards. I like to stack the forwards. It draws all their defenders in, leaves the space for the leading runs to try and get that area separation. It's helpful, and we're going to talk about sometimes when you do that and sometimes when you won't be able to do that as well. So, but you could call them left forward, right forward, centre forward if you prefer as well. Right, so let's start with pressing. So pressing the ball, we've set this up against a 4-3-3, but essentially the back three, you're player marking, and one of you, probably the centre back, will step forward. There will be many instances where you are free, like you are in this video, in this clip rather, and we're looking at minutes where you won't be free. The centre halves, you're going to play a mark as well. So everyone is player marking, basically in the bottom 2/3. This player is either free or they're not. Essentially, if this player is promoted, or this one, for example, and they're in the back three, then this player will now be player marking. But the centre forwards do all the work in this press. If the centre forwards don't do their job, this press will fail, right? So it's very important. You've got rotations in this position and they're happy working really, really hard. So what do? Well, the centre forward, you're looking at the ball to goal line, stopping that route one pass, and remember your forehand stick wants to be on the ball to goal line. So don't position your feet there, position your stick there. So you're always slightly to the left of the ball to goal line. And the other forwards, you have a player. So this centre forward will be responsible for their left back, and our left centre forward in this position would be responsible for putting pressure on their right back. And when we play a mark, it's really important to be front marking. One that gives you a chance if they suddenly lead. You know, you've got that time, that extra yard to catch them, and that's essentially it. You could at the start, this is quite useful at the start, see what they've got. What's this player got? Huge aerials, an amazing distribution, or do they crumble? So the first 5 minutes, teams do like to start off with a split press or a high press when you're basically cutting off the transfer. Whether it's a back four or back three, it doesn't really matter. Just cutting off the transfer. And what to do that, you'll have to promote one of the centre halves to this top of this arrowhead shape. Okay, so if you look in the last clip, there's this arrowhead shape, and we have that here as well. But now the centre back that was free isn't free. If you do this when they've got a back three, then you have a player essentially unmarked. So it's a little bit more risky. And a lot of teams are probably quite happy for players to just have the ball here because we'll win it in other places. Right, so yeah, you can see how risky that is for them and easy to cut the ball off. So make them panic at the start. Right, so we look at a 4-2-2. So the black team are the ones with the ball, and they're setting them at 4-2-2. And in the previous video, I said you will always have an extra player in the middle. Well, not in this press, because you're player marked. But if you are player marking against a 4-2-2, it kind of plays into the hands of using this space. So you can easily promote a back. So like, for example, if this player moved over here, this player moved, and then you've got a player unmarked. So you won't have the advantage of the extra player here, but you'll have an overload down the wings. If you watch the 4-2-2, unless you're being player marked, you do want to play through the lines, through the middle of the park. But essentially, if they don't promote or they're not used to promoting, you've negated their advantage. So that's a pretty good option. And again, this person will be free. You can step higher if you prefer. It's completely up to you. But essentially, you're a free player. What about if it was 4 at the back, and now we've gone back to the 4-3-3. So here, they've rotated into this sort of formation rather than just the one deeper player. But let's think, where do we want to win the ball? We want to win the ball here. This is the easiest place. And why? Because the sideline, if we're pressing, the sideline is on our side, really. It's like an extra player, or that's how I like to treat it. And remember what our job is to constrict the space. If you're pressing team, you're constricting. If you're in possession, you need to stretch the space and make as much as possible for you to lead into and receive. So let's have a look if the ball went out to the wide areas. So at the moment, because we're player marking and the ball started off in the center, most of our players will also be in the center. So this player has a responsibility to pressure the ball. I don't have a problem with you allowing the line. Some teams like to cut the line. I prefer to prevent this pass infield. The centre forward very simply steps and the other centre forward comes across. Nothing really changes for the roles of everyone else. You are player marking, but this person is free. You might use this person to cut the line. So if those players move, obviously you're going to follow. These two may have moved as well, and you just stick with them. And that free player could come across and look to cut the line. If it's a back three, we'll see that this no longer is an option because this player is now being marked. We've got player marking all over the pitch, and we've got that front arrowhead. So if it goes across, the same thing happens. The centre forward puts pressure. The other centre forwards come across. One is just making a nuisance for the next ball and cutting the transfer off. If we're going to allow the line, we've just got to make sure we're front marking, and this left wing back will have to be in front. You know they're going to leave the line, so leave your player. Be in front, and if it does get through, we'll run goal and we'll deal with it. Okay, but we have got player to player, so we're not in a bad position, but please have the confidence to push in front and try and win the ball. If we do win the ball in these areas, obviously we're looking to either like run high, receive it in the corner, or like post up into this space, but essentially we're attacking with 4 and 3 and we want to go forward first and as fast as we can. Yeah, so again, if they move, we move. What I will say about this player, you can see this player at the moment is not on the help side. You know, we're trying to constrict the space over here and they're not helping. So if their player stays, this is an instance where you would leave the player. You could even come across even more. Maybe don't leave these two. You might want to stick with them, but if they hang out right over here, yeah, come across, push someone on, and then we'll have the extra player if we need it, and we'll just go to another phase. Essentially, if we are beaten and it does come through and their player receives it, you essentially just run on a 45 or on a line back to your goal. Hopefully your teammates will just put pressure on the ball, slow it all down, and then we can regroup and just constrict the space. That's all your mindset is really, is constrict the space. But you can see even against a back three, we're still in a good position to win if we front mark. Half press. Now, a half press is a really good press, especially if these guys are super confident. You know, what's the point in putting them under pressure? They can get out of it, and it allows your team to recover. If you name your presses as well, rather than shouting out half press, you could just name your press. I like to use like 1, maybe 2 syllables. You could call it, I don't know, Thor or Pepsi. I don't know, just thinking of random words, and when you try and think of them, you struggle. But think of something you want to call it: alpha, beta, gamma. 2 syllables, 1 syllable, and you could call it, say, Thor 30, Thor 60, Thor 90. So 90 is your high press. You could go then 60 as your half press. Some teams, if they're really, really good, you might even condense right down. So maybe here as your leading centre forward and just really stop them coming into your circle. And that's an option you have to go 30, 60, 90. Yeah, and the reason this is good is if the ball is passed here, if you remember the left wing back and the centre forward player marking, sometimes that can be quite a long foot race to try and get in front of the player. On a half press, it's going to be significantly less. So what would happen is this person will have a lot less, and because we've condensed the space, it's much easier to come in front of this player, to put pressure on, cut the pass back, and on a half court, that's what you're looking to. When it comes to here, we're looking to cut the space. We've already constricted the space a lot more, and we'll just go from there. So yeah, think of a name for your presses and call it 30, 60, 90. You're not going to go far wrong. It's easy to communicate from the sidelines as well. So, but in this position, I would expect a different press. So come up with a different name. There's only really two. So you've either got the man-to-man press with the 3 arrowheads at the top, but this one is pretty much all man-to-man. You can see the pressure's straight on. The pressure is there. Every person is player marking. You could mess around with this position. You could put a lot more pressure on the ball, or you could come into the line if you really wanted to stop this, and stop the pass back. This might be a really good option in here. You could even push this centre forward up onto this player and just go for a really high intense man-to-man, player-to-player press, because the ball is in a really difficult position for them. All right, they can't go left, they can only go 1 or 2 ways, like down, in, or okay, that's 3 ways, but they can't go left, like they've got no options over here. So really put the pressure on, especially in that own 23 or 25, depending what you call it. Right, well here they've got back 3, they're playing a 3-2-3-2. And this is a different type of press. This is, I don't know what to call it, a box press, a pocket press. This is way more complex, and there's, depending on how good you are at it, there's different layers you could do. This can certainly go wrong more, but actually I really like it. Now, if the ball transfers, normally on a press, you would transfer left with it. So these 6 players, can you see these boxes here, like this box here and this box here, they could just all shuffle across. Or you could put a little bit more pressure on. You could say the centre forwards put pressure on the ball, stop the cutback, and then you're looking for the other players to step in front. Okay, so you've got a really nice progressive movement, putting pressure on their right back. The other centre forward, you can come in, sniffing out the danger for when it comes. Essentially, these 2 players are unmarked, but if the pressure is good, they're not going to be able to chuck an overhead that far or that quickly, and we've got player to player all over the place. But the main design for this is this false space. So if the ball is passed into this player, they think they're free, but as soon as they see it coming in is when these 2 switch on. So you're going to switch on, put pressure on the ball, don't commit a foul. The player that has gone past, you're going to be dropping in as well to offer some support inside. This player, you're kind of only responsible for here, and what we really want to happen is them just go, oh crikey, I'm under a lot of pressure here, let's just bounce it back. And that's a pretty natural reaction. It's pretty gutsy of a player to try and take on 2, and if they do it, just stay in the battle. Yeah, you don't have to make a tackle, you just have to freak them out. Just stick nice and low and stay there. This person might even come across as well to help out if they're starting to do things. Now, if you notice, I'll just go back. So this pocket collapsed. So these guys, it's really important you don't just stand and watch. It didn't go in your pocket, so you're offering help. So you're coming over to that help side. So we've got the collapse, and then we've got the movement over to the help side. There we go. So we want it to go back, and that's what you're waiting for. You've got 2 choices here. You can either go, and then if you wanted to, this is an option. If you wanted to, you could also rotate these 2. But that's just adding layers of complexity. And if it does get through these 2 players, obviously we can step then because we've got a player extra. So it's not the end of the world if you don't do that. You can just react on phase 2. But the idea, remember, is to pass it back. So when they do pass it back, here are your 2 options. You just go back to exactly where you were. Imagine if these 2 players didn't move. That's pretty easy to do. Or you can try to press them really aggressively. Super mega high press, we spoke about that in the last video. So once it's gone back, if you're all in unison, it will work. So the centre forward puts pressure, we stop both transfers, we stop both in passes, and then this is a bit of a worry, but you can be aware of it. I don't know, this is why it gets complicated. This player could also push this player off and say, right, you cover that, but you want to be front marking here. So that's an error on my part. You want to be front marking. Again, front marking here because this ball, if the pressure's on, you're not giving them the time to look up. And remember, you're not trying to make a tackle, you're trying to force a rubbish pass. So that's the idea. Don't be obsessed with making tackles, force a pass to one of these 5 advanced high pressing players. So I really like the pocket press, but it is harder to get right and will require a lot of practice. So how does it stack up against the 4-2-2? Well, you've got the two false spaces, you've still got a player marking here, and essentially there's 3 on these two. So in many ways, it again nullifies the threat of the 4-2-2 against some of the more standard presses. So that's fine. Let's have a look at so it will work fine against that if everyone does their job. Let's look at the 4-3-3. So I've got them in this formation, but please remember most teams will probably set up to here and then look to go to that formation. So we'll talk briefly now about what I would expect from these two players. So wait for some movement, look for where their space is. So if this person decides I'm going to run into this pocket, we would expect some sort of movement like that. So the two higher ones are looking for those pockets of space to run into, and essentially we've got 2 screens. Now, how do you beat it? Well, if it comes into this pocket, this person's got to move quickly, and then we can send it out there. Outletting. So this is where the 4-3-3 is really quite tricky in comparison to the other ones. You just have less options. So let's look at this, for example. They're setting up in a 2-3-2-3 sort of, or a 3-2-3-2, I should say, formation. And if they pop it here, we're in trouble. If these centre halves just are pretty stagnant, not doing much, you're in a lot of trouble now because they're going to put pressure on the ball, maybe even cut the transfer. I quite like this option of just stopping it coming in, allowing it to go back here, and these two players will simply step. You know, they're not going to be far away from you anyway, so they're just going to step, and yeah, good luck. That's not going to be enjoyable. And again, remember, these players are going to be coming across. The transfer is not on at all. You know, you've got to just look for a foul in that situation and say, right, guys, don't ever do that to me again. So the 3 in the center really need to work together if you're going to have success with the 4-3-3. And what I mean by that is if the ball is here, there's a pocket of space, right? So this pocket of space needs to be filled, and then this player can maybe move into this player, or this player can then roll out and this player come in, but something like that, all right? So that's where the pockets of space were. And then when we play this, you can see there's a bit more hesitation in this player. You know, this player, well, if I push too hard, they've got an in here. They'll be focused on this ball, so any lead out from this player, have I got that? Not yet. But essentially, if there is space, you want to take the space, you want to occupy the space, draw this player in, and then look. But if you do that, okay, look at that, you're going to try and promote. So with the 4-3-3, you have to promote one of your wing backs every single play to get the numbers. You know that the 3-2-3-2, they've got high numbers in the middle. The 4-2-2, exactly the same thing. So the 4-3-3, you know, it's player-to-player marking, so it's difficult. But if they work together and come over, then you're going to have space, and that player stacking in the middle will allow also an option down the wing. And this person is, can I go? Do I have to stay? No, so it's a lot harder. So here it is against the 4-2-2, and again, you can see there's 4 players against 2 or 3 in here. So it is tricky to play against. And if you don't pin this player, so if you are coming in here and they're staying, so you're like, they only have to commit one of these players in, right? So if the ball is here, they might bring this player in, but this player is free now to promote. So if you pass it here, you're outnumbered. If you pass it in the middle, you're outnumbered. So what do you do against this one? Well, you have to pin a player. So one of your centre forwards will have to come out and pin the player to stop them doing this. That's the only play I can see that's going to work there. So that now allows you to pass out wide, and it allows you to build from the widths. If you pass it in the middle against this formation, you will lose, okay, in most of the time. But yeah, so take the space because the space is there because you pin this player, and then what can we do? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe against 2, but remember if it goes, these are all pressing over. But it's an even fight, okay? So that's what we're looking for. You've certainly eliminated the front line, so that's your first goal. So in this one, we've got the same sort of formation, the same sort of press we were talking about before. So we've got the player marking here. We've got this free player here. They're front marking our players. And this is pretty intimidating, right? So we can't go out here because we're going to be pressed. They're all player marking. If our movement's not great, so what would I do against this? So the four allows them to have this free player. So for me, what I'd like to see here is this person, remember, is typically responsible for this person here. So let's mess with this person. I would go wider here and then promote this player. Don't set up as a back three, set up like this and then promote, because you're allowing them to get set and then asking the questions for them to move. So if you promote this player and move this player across, what does this person now do? Do they come over here to stop the ball and then allowing you time to make a decision, allowing time for, especially if we've stacked the players here, leading into space, getting that area of separation will be a lot easier if they're stacked in the middle. So that's how I would get out of that. So that's a really nice move. And if you do that, obviously we go to a back three and we're looking to exploit the wings there. Right, that's it. There's a lot to take in. 2 different pressing options. We've looked at pretty much a load of scenarios. I hope it helps. Choose which bits you like, and best of luck.